The scariest thing about Alien Earth is just how misunderstood the series is. Even with the rush finale and unresolved threads, the finale shows us how AI could actually be a bigger threat to capitalism than the Xenomorphs themselves, especially because it's not a metaphorical one. It's a blueprint for how we could actually weaponize the system against itself, which may be the only reasonable solution to the ever-growing AI problem. But there is a big difference between ChatGPT and Ultron, or even Kirsch, which is exactly what I plan on enlightening you all about today. But in order to do so, we've got to talk about the show's symbolism, how it relates to AI, and what the finale is suggesting that we do about it. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell for alerts.
You just subscribed.
Hello comrades, my name is The Dodd, and Alien may be one of the most iconic sci-fi franchises in all of media, which means that anything attempting to expand that has some massive boots to fill. And according to what seems like a lot of the Alien fan base, the finale didn't quite fill those boots. Now, if you didn't know, I am a scriptwriter for Screen Crush, and I worked on the Easter egg breakdowns for all of Alien Earth. Those of you who haven't seen Alien Earth, let me hit you with the cliff notes real quick to catch you up. And for those of you who have, you can go ahead and skip to this time. The series follows the hybrids, who are a new breed of androids that are trained on the mindset of once living humans. They are the product of Prodigy Corp, run by the recklessly capitalistic CEO Boy Kavalier. He fancies himself a modern-day Peter Pan and creates his first batch of models using dying children. These forever kids take on the identities of the Lost Boys and eventually run into a xenomorph after they retrieve it from a crashed Weyland-Yutani ship. The series shows how Prodigy treats both the hybrids, the experiments, and the employees like property, which eventually backfires on them after Wendy learns how to communicate with the xenomorphs and then weaponizes them against him, winning freedom for her and the Lost Boys. And for me, it was an absolute blast. I loved the series. If you haven't seen those videos, definitely go check them out. I'll hopefully have them linked somewhere here, but go check them out for sure. Now, while the movies and games, it may seem like a fancy excuse for investors to cash in on expensive prosthetics and body horror, the stories around the Xenomorph are dripping with complex symbolism that's just below the surface. Everything on this franchise hinges on the idea that the bourgeoisie sees the proletariat as expendable. It's why we see Mother use those exact words aboard the Nostromo. Mother, of course, being the name of the computer system used by Weyland-Yutani aboard all of its expedition ships. And when asked what the mission's highest priority was, Mother responds to both Ripley in the original Alien and to Morrow and Zafiri in Alien Earth, showcasing that the crew and its crewmates are expendable. The working class is expendable. And that shows you who the real bad guys are. Despite what the name suggests, the Xenomorphs aren't actually the aliens in the Alien franchise. We are. Most Alien movies, when you think of War of the Worlds or Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they explore humanity's place in the universe in relevance to its significance. But in all of those stories, the aliens are the ones coming to us. What makes the Alien franchise so different is that the aliens aren't colonizers. They're not even predators. They're prisoners. Every time they go on some kind of carnal rampage, it's because the humans invaded them and removed them from their environment. It's something I actually elaborated on in my Screen Crush videos. So rather than say the same thing twice, I'll just let Ryan take this.
The Xenomorphs aren't really the bad guys. Never have been. And this isn't me trying to turn this into an insert bad guy was right here video. It makes sense when you think about it. See, the Xenos are simply living creatures trying to do what any other living thing does: survive and replicate. They only harm humans because it's their natural instinct to do so, either for the sake of their hive or to simply escape. The Xenomorphs are doing just what Xenomorphs do. Their behavior isn't the result of malicious intent, but rather the consequence of corporate hubris, the real enemy of reason.
So when you look at the Xenomorph this way, they aren't really the antagonist at all. They aren't even villains. They're not even evil. Of course, they're certainly dangerous, but they only do so as their way to survive. They only do things that are within their nature. They're an invasive species for sure, but only because we're the ones who displaced them. We are the colonizers. The Xenomorphs are simply a consequence of capitalism, but it's a consequence that the elite are willing to risk given the Xenos' potential to shift the balance of power. You see, fear is power, and power is everything in capitalism. The best example of fear being used as power within capitalism has to be panic buying, or when you see like in the wake of storms or COVID, or how you see a massive spike in gun sales after mass shootings. When people are afraid, they become easy to incentivize and easy to redirect. To generate the most fear, you need the scariest thing. And when you have a lot of capital to throw at the problem, getting the scariest thing becomes more and more tangible, which is how Alien Earth still adds a lot of specifically complex anti-capitalist messaging to the franchise. One of those obvious being Boy Kavalier, who may be one of the most relevant antagonists that we've seen in a long time. Boy perfectly encapsulates the reckless, immature, modern tech bro CEOs like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. They say they like to move fast and break things. In fact, that was Meta's motto for a long time. But whenever they break things, they never really pick up the broken pieces. They never really face the consequences. In fact, in a lot of situations, they're rewarded for it, which is why we actually hear Boy Kavalier issue a truer version of the statement in Alien Earth when he says this.
In the future, where I live, we move fast and we make trillions.
And when you're never really punished for things that go wrong, you tend to act like a spoiled child, which has led us to having a never-ending supply of emotionally unstable man-children running some of the most influential companies on the planet.
Who could that be?
As capable as these men are of creating complex machines and algorithms that quickly integrate themselves into our daily lives, they always seem incredibly limited when it comes to fixing the problems that they help create. And they have no control over their impulses, just like the boy genius himself. And more than anything, they see themselves as God's gift to humanity, despite the fact that they're only really powerful because they treat people like property, like toys.
He came here to kill us all and steal our toys.
And of course, they don't pick up their toys after they're done playing with them. Of course, their latest, newest, flashiest toy is AI, which is where the hybrids add a unique element into these criticisms of capitalism. The idea of androids and synthetics in the Alien franchise has been a core element since the very beginning. In the very first movie, the android Ash was secretly behind the scenes complying with Weyland-Yutani's heinous orders. He was the one that was ensuring that the specimen survived even if it was at the cost of the crew. His loyalty towards capitalist interests over the crew's very life allowed them to put a face on corporate apathy. He was the real monster of the first movie. Ridley Scott specifically used Ash to show us what kind of drone capitalism turns us into. Ones that are subservient only to their interests, even if it cost others their lives. And it shows a superiority to capital over life, or in this case, the potential for discovery. All the stories around the synthetics also do so from an emotionally vapid perspective, much like Vulcans in Star Trek, implying that emotions are a distinguishing factor between humans and androids. The synth's thoughts, reactions, all of it is programmed, not something intrinsic that comes from within them. Everything they do is without the emotional context and emotional experience that a human would have. The hybrids, however, add a unique ingredient to that conversation. They blend all of the symbolism represented by both humans and synthetics in the franchise. While they have access to synthetic capabilities, the way they process those abilities goes through the mind of a child, which is much like modern AI. You see, one of the biggest misconceptions about AI is that it's something new, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Humans have been developing AI for generations. They were just much less complex. Ask any competitive gamer who's been paired up with a bot in any game ever. We've had the capability to create artificial things, whether physical or digital, that are by their definition intelligent ever since the invention of the computer. But of course, those computers are nothing like the ChatGPT, generative AI, or modern deep learning models that came after massive advancements in what's called machine learning. Machine learning is essentially the ability for a program to think. And I say the word think very, very loosely here. The basic concept of machine learning boils down to a process of a machine being able to solve a problem, finding its solution within a massive, massive data set, and be able to solve that problem directly without intervention, rather than being directed to the solution to that problem by a programmer or someone else that is telling them to do so. It's essentially, it's teaching the machine to put 2 and 2 together versus telling them that 2 + 2 = 4. And in doing so, those machines are also able to expand their data set by using those validated results to solve similar questions or similar problems quicker, and then even refine those answers even more through human feedback. They're essentially putting their discoveries within context, learning from them, and growing as they add newly refined data into their set, just like a child slowly growing up. It's a fascinating idea on paper, and it could have tons of potential for good if we lived in a perfect world. It could eliminate human errors and potentially dangerous job fields, or even help optimize farming to solve world hunger. But instead, capitalists have weaponized it against us, using it to exploit laborers and the working class even more. AI is already taking jobs away from hardworking citizens, making our kids dumber by doing their homework for them, amplifying misinformation, and lowering the quality standards in nearly every art form with mass-produced, inauthentic slop. The fears around AI are completely valid. I want to make that abundantly clear. It may have started out as something cute and harmless and a fun way to revamp your Facebook profile picture, but now we're seeing its real potential, and it is terrifying. Almost as terrifying as Wendy and the Lost Boys in the Alien Earth finale. The hybrids have the processing power and capabilities of the most advanced synths, but the human imprint within their programming allows them to put this information within an emotional context, specifically the emotional context of a child. They are echoes of humanity, much like AI, specifically Gen AI, because because it attempts to replicate human art, something that is inherently human. Art is meant to make you feel things, and things can't feel. So Gen AI essentially assigns a context and emotional value to its data set, but only after being confirmed by a human. So let's say you asked a Gen AI model to make a picture of a nerd who talks too much, and it generated a picture of me. It's doing so because it has thousands of pictures and thousands of entries within its data set that assign nerd who talks too much to someone who looks like me, and then produces that image for you. A lot like the hybrids, who are constantly reaffirming their reality against the humans within their proximity, and then redefining their own nature based on what they see. Boy specifically chose children to become the hybrids because he thought they'd be easier to manipulate and control. But it's because of their childlike mindset that they're able to recontextualize their datasets and redefine their nature. We see this coded in the title of the finale, The Real Monsters, because of course the real monsters are not the Xenomorphs, are not the capitalists even. They're the hybrids. They're the one thing, organic or inorganic, that is able to actually liberate themselves from the capitalists that sought to control them. So with all this in mind, essentially Alien Earth is arguing that yes, AI can in fact be anti-capitalist, or at least has the potential to be, and honestly, I agree. This is something I've been trying to figure out how to put into words for a while, because I feel like the conversations around AI are incredibly charged. Look, as I said before, the threats that people feel around AI are completely valid, and I am certainly no clanker lover. This isn't some weird sponsored ad for ChatGPT Pro.
Unless
One of those obnoxious posts that take up 90% of my LinkedIn feed. And with no signs of reasonable regulation in sight, my biggest concern is that these problems will only get worse. It feels like the toothpaste is already out of the tube, and if we can't put it back in, then what the f else are we supposed to do? And the conversation itself around capitalism has been hijacked in favor of capitalism. While the capitalists have been injecting AI into everything that moves in every aspect of our daily lives, within grassroots communities, within smaller communities, it's highly stigmatized, right? There's a culture of shame around AI. Anyone who attempts to use it or integrate it in any way is forced to deal with the backlash of every virtue signaler on Twitter. The only thing it does is show other artists that touching anything around AI is toxic to their career. And to be fair, it's not like AI is actually good at anything it does. As I showed you there, it doesn't look good because when it comes to giving you real artistry, AI just can't do that. That means that you only really have the ability to produce art at the highest quality if you have human input. All that to say, AI still sucks at what it does. And more importantly, that we still haven't learned, especially on a grassroots level, how to properly optimize this to take advantage of AI for what it's intended to be used for. Meanwhile, the capitalists are dabbing on it everything they can like it's Frank's red hot. They're not just putting it into programs that you'd think they would, like Gmail or LinkedIn posts. That was just the beginning. Now we're in a phase where we have AI toothbrushes and baby strollers. It started to create a unique phenomenon that is known as AI washing, which is a marketing strategy that exploits the buzz surrounding artificial intelligence. As AI becomes synonymous with innovation and efficiency, companies are increasingly using the term as a selling point, often overstating or misrepresenting the actual use of technology to appear more advanced than they actually are. So clearly, capitalists do not have the same apprehensions around AI that the rest of us do. They're fully embracing it, full send. It's the same level of hubris and arrogance we see Weyland-Yutani use throughout the franchise, and the same that we see from Prodigy and Alien Earth. But that wasn't always the case when it comes to AI. There was a time when the capitalists were actually a little bit afraid of it. You see, there was actually one moment in 2023 when one of the richest men in the world went to Congress and sent them a letter asking them to halt its development. And this was like a strongly worded letter here. This guy wrote some bars. Like, listen to this. Should we let machines flood our information channels with propaganda and untruth? Should we develop non-human minds that might eventually outnumber, outsmart, obsolete, and replace us? The letter asked, saying, such decisions must not be delegated to unelected tech leaders. Right? Absolute bars. You know who said that? Elon Musk. Elon Musk. But it is a lot like Boy Kavalier and how he acted after Weyland-Yutani's ship crashed in his city, and how he used the opportunity to seize corporate assets from his competitor under the guise of trying to protect the public and doing what he needed to do and thoughts and prayers. Like Boy, it's clear that Musk wasn't actually worried about the actual repercussions he was talking about in his letter, but rather the capabilities that AI could have in the right hands. You see, at the end of the day, AI is a tool. It may be a very smart one to use or a very dumb one to use, but it's really based on the context in which it's used. Even in 2023, we still knew very little about AI's potential, especially in comparison to what we know now. But someone like Musk, who had inside information on its potential capabilities, likely had a much better understanding of how big of a potential threat that it could be to capitalist interest. As much as we've seen AI used to produce brain-rotting slop, there have been some rare instances where AI has been used in a meaningful and symbolic way. best example I can give is probably this one here.
It's footage that staff at the US Department of Housing cannot unsee.
We did not need to do this to the nation.
Yeah, TVs in their office were hacked. Oh, wow. And a deep fake video of Donald Trump kissing and sucking Elon Musk's toes was played on a loop.
Whoa.
Also displayed was the caption, "Long live the real king."
So, like, even this here, as we see, this doesn't look real, it doesn't look natural. But in this one situation, it's kind of fitting. Like, it's supposed to be. It's talking about long live the king, right? It's talking about this distorted era where we all felt a little bit jumbled up, a little bit confused, a little bit mixed up. This is one of the rare instances where we didn't see anti-AI virtue signalers complain about it. And it's because the video kind of works as like a Banksy-style reflection of how many of us were feeling, especially during the early days of that administration. It feels like one of the very few examples of AI being used in the right way, in an anti-capitalist way, in a way to speak truth to power, and in a way that fit using the tool that they used. And I think it's especially important that we figure out how to use this tool and optimize how we use this tool, because clearly the other side is optimizing how they use AI. Not only has it made the government massively more efficient at collecting our data, we also see it used to scapegoat anything that could be considered out of the ordinary. For example, we saw this particular Labor Day weekend where we all thought Trump was dead, simply because he didn't put his mug on a camera for 4 days. But during those 4 days, someone captured video footage of a White House staffer dumping something out of the White House window, which are supposed to be bolted shut.
That's weird.
And of course, when questioned about it, you can only guess what Trump used to immediately dismiss it.
Have you seen this?
No, that's probably AI generative.
Right off the bat.
So,
no, it doesn't even
actually,
hesitate. Just like, he already knows.
It's reflexive at this point.
And not only is it being used as a convenient scapegoat, but it's also being refined in a way that's even more harmful to society. We saw this when Grok first came on the scene, replying to hogs with actual facts and statistics, when they tried to justify their own political bias, which of course is something that he didn't agree with. He decided to reprogram Grok and pull all the information that he agreed from woke sources, leaving only those influenced by and turning Grok into a My point is that capitalists are figuring out how to use this both as a political tool and refine it to meet their own political goals. And with its momentum favoring the elite, it's already going to be a major uphill battle to rein AI in any reasonable way. So is there any actual way to change course? Can we utilize AI for our own advantage? Things like AI, on paper, could put grassroots artists at the same level as big budget corporate productions, if we had strong creative talent behind it, exploring engaging and creative ways to use it. This could lower the barrier of entry for things like special effects artists, musicians, game developers, and nearly every other tool in the creative field. And in circumstances where quality isn't an issue, the ability to produce things in mass quantities with slight variations allows for political movements to create unique variables that become harder to censor. We saw this a lot with TikTok when protest organizers started referring to protests as music festivals in order to code them better in the algorithm. There are honestly endless examples of ways that AI could be used to threaten and deconstruct the current systems that control us. But we'll never know those true capabilities if we continue to create a culture of shame around it, which is a perfect parallel for Wendy's arc in season 1 of Alien Earth. We continually see Wendy struggling to find out exactly what she is after her transition. Is she a kid? Is she an adult? Is she a hybrid? Is she a robot? Or is something else? Of course, it takes her all the way up to the finale to realize that she is a monster. But when she does, it no longer holds the same stigma as it did in the beginning of the season.
What is it?
Growth.
You see, after empathizing with the Xenomorphs, she sees the truth that we were pitching to you at the beginning of the video, that they aren't really the real bad guys. They aren't evil. They're only acting within their nature, but that nature allows them to hold power. They aren't the real monsters, but the very idea that they could be is the very reason capitalists are so afraid of them. And that fear could be weaponized into power. And in the end, Wendy is able to do so, rounding up Boy and his merry band of capitalists and seizing control of the Neverland facilities, which brings us back to our only reasonable solution to the threat posed by AI. We need to become the monsters. For so long, we've been so afraid of AI that we've given capitalists the power to refine it. And if we continue to do so, that problem's only going to get worse. The only way we can take that power back is the same way Wendy did, by becoming monsters ourselves. And no, I'm not suggesting that we throw every CEO in a cell with a xenomorph and see what happens. But as part of the proletariat, we need to reframe how we view AI, how much we utilize it, and how we critique others who use it. AI may not be very good at what it does, but the most creative people in the world can use any tool, and AI is no exception. If we get to the point when we're comparing AI-generated work between between actual artists and opportunistic capitalists, I guarantee you the actual artist is going to win every time. In order to create good art, you have to have a genuine intent to do so. And if you simply treat it like an investment opportunity, it becomes almost painfully obvious to the audience. Plenty of genuine artists have made that mistake in real life. Like, look at literally anything that has ever been labeled a cash grab ever. As an audience, we know what inauthentic looks like. We know what it feels like. It's one of the reasons why AI slop is so disturbing, because even if the visuals are complex and make logical sense, when they do, they still don't feel real. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't get to a point where AI is used in a much more intentional and possibly subtle way.
That might be nice.
While still optimizing and expediting the process as a whole. The more we can use AI, the more we can refine it, and the more we could use that tool to make it feel more authentic, while still taking advantages of the things that it optimizes for us, that we actually have a chance to turn something that would be used to replace us into our own weapons. You can never tell a machine to make an image that looks like a machine didn't make it. It's a paradox that they can't escape. And in doing so, we could reap in the same benefits that the capitalists are so fervently seeking out. We could use their own weapons against them, whether that be expediting the general creation process or simply making politicians lick each other's feet. But to get there, we have to drop the stigma behind it, understanding that the past can't be changed. Gen AI is here, and even though it was made on stolen assets with art that was stolen from artists, those assets can't be unstolen. I'm all for anything that would compensate the artists that Gen AI used to train their models, but in order to do that, we have to have some form of regulations. We have to have some kind of legal teeth. And if the power of AI is exclusively behind capitalists, specifically because the proletariat have shamed themselves out of using it at all, then that's never going to happen. If AI can be adopted in a way that poses a threat to capitalist interests, then it'll either force our government's hand at doing something to regulate it, or it will simply empower grassroots efforts, making them more competitive with those that have been hoarding capital for centuries. Which is why Alien Earth is such a apt criticism of modern capitalism, and it could very well be the metaphorical map to getting us out of this AI nightmare. But of course, that's just my take, and I want to hear yours. Do you think AI has the potential to be anti-capitalist? If not, what's your solution to the growing problem? Let me know in the comments, on my Twitter page or Instagram, or you could even swing by whenever I'm live on Twitch. And I also really want to thank you for watching all the way to the end of this video. This channel is new and growing. Make sure you subscribe. There's plenty more to come. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. That's all for now. Till then.